I read my sister's text 3 times before I put the phone face down on the kitchen counter. She hadn't even spelled my name right. She never did. 17 years of being her sister, and she still typed Megan when my name is Megan. No, wait, that's the point. She's always made me feel like a typo, like something that happened by accident and never got corrected. I stood there in my kitchen, in my apartment that I had painted myself because I couldn't afford a contractor, staring at the window over the sink. The afternoon light was coming in sideways, hitting the corner of the countertop, and I thought, they saw it. Someone showed them the interview. 3 weeks earlier, I had sat in a conference room in downtown Chicago and answered questions for 40 minutes about how I had built my company from a $4,000 personal loan into something that had just closed a Series B at a $38 million valuation. The journalist was kind. She asked good questions. She wrote a piece that ran in Inc. magazine with a photo of me standing by the window of our office, looking like someone who had figured something out. I had not told my family it was coming. I want to explain why, but I also don't want to make excuses for myself. The truth is simple. I didn't tell them because I had learned over a very long time that telling them things made those things smaller. Like showing someone a candle flame and watching them cup their hand around it. Not to protect it, to smother it. My mother called first. Then my father. Then my sister's text came in, the one I read 3 times. It said, "Family dinner Sunday. Dad wants everyone there. Important. No congratulations. No, I saw the article. No, I had no idea. I'm so proud of you. Just come to dinner. Bring yourself. We have things to discuss. I should tell you about where I grew up so you understand the geography of what I mean. My parents live in a 4-bedroom house in a suburb of Cincinnati, Ohio. The kind of neighborhood where everyone has a basketball hoop in the driveway and a gas grill they use twice a year. My father sold commercial insurance for 31 years. My mother taught 3rd grade until her knees gave out. Then she became the kind of woman who organizes other people's charity galas and considers that a career. My sister is 3 years older than me. Her name is Tatum, and she was always the one who made sense to them. She married young, 24, to a man named Fletcher, who works in finance and wears the same 4 ties on rotation. They have 2 kids and a house 12 minutes from my parents, and they go to the same church, and they have brunch every Sunday, and my mother calls Tatum her best friend, without any apparent awareness of what that does to the other daughter. I moved to Chicago at 22 with a graphic design degree, a portfolio that was honestly pretty good, and approximately no plan. I waitressed. I did freelance logo work for small businesses. I designed menus, wedding invitations, the occasional company newsletter. I lived in a studio apartment where the radiator clicked so loudly at night that I bought a white noise machine just to sleep through it. I called home sometimes, not often. The calls had a way of ending with me feeling like I'd done something wrong, though no one ever said exactly what. When I was 26, I started noticing something. Every small business I worked with had the same problem. They needed good branding. But the agencies that could actually do it well charged $15,000 minimum, and the cheap options looked cheap. There was nobody in the middle, nobody building something accessible that didn't sacrifice quality. So I built it. I'm not going to make it sound romantic because it wasn't. I maxed out a credit card. I worked until 2 in the morning more times than I can count. I hired my first employee, a developer named Jonah, before I could really afford to, because I believed the thing he was building with me was worth the risk. I ate a lot of eggs. I drove a 2009 Honda Civic with a cracked dashboard that I refused to replace because every dollar had somewhere more important to go. I did not call home much during those years, and they did not call me. I want to be precise about that because it matters. This was not me being distant. I called on holidays. I called on birthdays. I sent Christmas gifts and remembered my nephew's soccer games and asked my niece about her piano recital. The calls were just thin, like a phone connection with bad signal, technically functioning, not actually reaching. My father asked me once, around year 3, what exactly it was I did for work. I explained it. He nodded and said, "So, like a design agency?" I said yes, essentially. He said, That was the whole conversation. My mother told me I should think about whether I wanted to have a family someday because the window closes faster than you think. I was 28. I had 11 employees and a product that was being used in 43 states. The window she was worried about was not the one I was looking through. The dinner I'm talking about, the one I want to tell you about, happened this past spring. I was 31. The ink piece had run 2 weeks earlier. Our Series B had closed in February. The $38 million valuation wasn't a secret anymore. It was just a fact. The way revenue numbers become facts after a certain point, impersonal and real at the same time. And my family, who had not asked me a single substantive question about my work in 3 years, wanted me at Sunday dinner. Immediately, I drove down Saturday morning and stayed at a hotel. This was a deliberate choice. My mother always assumed I would stay in my old room, which had been converted to a sewing room about 4 years after I left for college, with a pull-out sofa that left a bar impression across my back every time I slept on it. I booked a Hampton Inn. I paid for it myself, obviously. I paid for everything myself. I went to dinner at my parents' house at 6 o'clock on Sunday evening. Tatum was already there. Fletcher was beside her in his Sunday clothes, which are different from his weekday clothes only in that they have no visible wrinkles. My mother had made a roast. My father had set the table with the good dishes, the ones that only came out at Easter and Thanksgiving, and apparently also at interventions disguised as family dinners. Nobody hugged me at the door. My mother said, "You made it," like she'd had reasonable doubt about whether I would appear. I sat down. My father sat at the head of the table. My mother sat at the other end. Tatum and Fletcher sat across from me. I sat alone on my side, which meant I was facing all of them at once, which I suspect was not an accident. My father waited until we'd served ourselves before he said anything real. "We saw the article," he said. I put my fork down. Okay. $38 million. He said it the way he might have said a number off a foreign menu, like he couldn't quite locate where to file it. That's the valuation, yes. Tatum glanced at Fletcher. Fletcher looked at his plate. My mother passed the rolls to nobody. "We just feel like," my father said. "We don't really know what's going on with you. We'd like to be more involved." I looked at him for a long moment. Involved in what? In your life. In your business. And we're your family, Megan. I hadn't told you my name yet. It's Megan. And hearing my father say it right then, at that table, with the good dishes and the roast and the 8 months of silence since the last time we'd had a real conversation, it landed strangely. Like hearing a word in a language you used to speak, but stopped. "You've always been involved in my life," I said. My mother made a small sound. "We've barely heard from you. I called on Christmas. I called on your birthday. I called on Dad's birthday." I kept my voice level. "The last time you called me was in September, to tell me that Tatum's kitchen renovation was finally finished." Tatum opened her mouth, closed it. "We're not here to argue," my father said. He shifted in his chair. "We're here because we think it would be good for all of us to be closer. And we wondered if, since you're doing so well, if there might be some opportunities to invest or to be part of what you're building." There it was. I had known it was coming. I had known it from the moment I read my sister's text, if I'm being honest. Probably from the moment I saw the ink. Piece go live and thought, they're going to see this. And I had spent 2 weeks deciding how I would feel when this moment arrived. I had decided I would feel calm, not cold. I'm not a cold person, but calm. Settled in a way that didn't depend on what they said or how they said it. "That's not something I'm able to do," I said. My father frowned. "We're not asking for a handout. We're talking about an investment. Family participation." "I know what you're talking about." I picked my fork back up. "And I'm telling you, it's not something I can offer." "Why not?" Tatum's voice had an edge to it. The edge she'd been using on me since I was 8 years old. "You have a $38 million company. You can't include your own family?" "I have a company with a $38 million valuation," I said. "That's different from having $38 million. And the reason I can't include my family isn't financial. It's that I've built something very carefully, and I'm not in a position to mix professional decisions with personal ones. That's ridiculous, she said. That's just an excuse. Tatum. My father held up one hand. Fletcher, to his credit, had not said anything. He was still looking at his plate. I almost felt bad for him. My mother leaned forward. We're just asking for a chance. We want to be part of this. We've always supported you. I set my fork down again. Mom. I said it quietly. When I moved to Chicago, you asked me if I was sure I wanted to do this, or if I was just running away from something. When I told you I was starting a company, Dad said, "What happens if it doesn't work out?" When I got my first real client, a regional restaurant chain, 280 locations, I called to tell you, and you spent most of that call telling me about Tatum's pregnancy. I'm not saying any of that to be cruel. I'm saying it because I need you to understand that support has a timeline. You can't opt out for the first 9 years and opt back in at the valuation. The table was very quiet. My mother looked at my father. My father looked somewhere over my shoulder. That's not fair, my mother said finally. Her voice was smaller now. It's the most fair thing I've said to you in a long time, I told her, because I'm saying it to your face instead of to myself in my car on the drive home. I want to tell you what happened before I got to that table, because there's a part of this story I haven't gotten to yet. And the weeks after the ink piece ran, I had a lot of conversations with a lot of people. One of them was with my attorney. Her name is Simone, and she has been my attorney since year 2. When I hired her for $150 an hour, and she talked me out of 3 mistakes I didn't know I was making. Simone is the kind of person who reads the fine print as a hobby. I had told Simone that my family might come back into the picture once the article ran. She had nodded like this was not a surprise to her, and she had said, very casually, it might be worth knowing if they have any financial exposure before you sit down with them. It was not something I had thought about. My family, as far as I knew, managed their own money, and it had nothing to do with me. But Simone is thorough. She's always been thorough. And what she found when she looked was this. My father had taken out a business loan 3 years earlier. He had invested in a small commercial property, a strip mall on the edge of the suburb where I grew up. The kind of place with a nail salon and a tax preparation office, and one of those stores that sells custom t-shirts. The loan was through a regional lender. The property had not performed the way my father expected. He was behind on payments. Not catastrophically, not foreclosure immediately, but behind in a way that was becoming a problem. The loan had been sold once already, to a secondary lender, at a discount. I bought it. I want to be careful about how I describe this, because it's been misunderstood before. I did not buy it out of malice. I did not buy it to punish my father or to hold something over him. I bought it because Simone presented it as an option, and I thought, if I'm going to walk into that dinner, I should understand the full picture. And understanding the full picture sometimes means holding the picture. It was not a large purchase. The loan was worth less than I spent on software licenses in a quarter. But it was mine now, legally, quietly, in a way that my father did not know when he sat down at the head of that table and suggested he might like to invest in my company. I had not planned to say anything about it that night. I had not planned to use it. I want to be clear about that. But my sister looked at me across that table, with the edge in her voice, and said, "You know what your problem is? You've always acted like you were better than us, even when you were nobody." And something shifted in me. Not anger. I want to get this right. It wasn't anger. It was something more like clarity. The way a fogged window clears when the temperature changes and you can suddenly see what's outside. "Tatum," I said, "I think Dad should probably tell you about the loan on the Kenwood property." Silence. My father's face changed. Not dramatically. He's not a dramatic man. But something went out of his eyes, replaced by something careful. "What loan?" Tatum said. "The commercial property loan," I said. "The one that was sold to a secondary lender about 14 months ago." the one that's currently in arrears. I looked at my father. I bought it, Dad, 6 weeks ago, from the secondary lender. My mother said, "What?" My father said nothing. He was looking at me the way people look at something they recognize but can't place, like a face from a long time ago. "I'm not here to threaten you," I said. "I meant that. I'm not going to do anything with that loan that you don't know about in advance. But I think it's important that everyone at this table understands the full picture. You came here tonight asking me for something. I think it's fair that you know where everyone actually stands." Fletcher finally looked up from his plate. He looked at my father. Something passed between them that I couldn't read. "How did you even know about that?" my father asked. "I have good people working for me," I said. "That's the whole point." We finished dinner. We did. My mother had made a pie apple, which has always been my favorite, though I don't know if she remembered that or if it was a coincidence, and we ate it mostly in silence. The conversation that happened over pie was about my nephew's baseball season and whether my parents were going to repaint the living room. Normal things. The kind of things families talk about when they are carefully not talking about other things. I helped clear the table. I hugged my mother at the door. She held on a little longer than usual. I don't know exactly what that meant. I'm still not sure I know. My father walked me to my car. This was unusual. He stood with his hands in his pockets at the end of the driveway while I unlocked the door, and he said, "I didn't know you were watching." I thought about that for a second. "I wasn't watching," I said. "I just kept going." He nodded slowly, the kind of nod that might mean several different things. I got in the car. I sat there for a moment in the driveway, engine off, keys in my hand, looking at the house I grew up in. The light in the kitchen was on. My mother was probably already at the sink. Tatum's car was still in the driveway. Fletcher would be inside, probably talking to my father about the loan, working out the geometry of what had just happened. There are things I want for my family that I'm not sure I will ever get. I know that. I've known it for a while, in the way you know something that is true but still inconvenient, still worth grieving, still worth sitting with in a parked car at 9 o'clock on a Sunday night. But I also know this. I built something real. I built it without a safety net, without a cosigner, without anyone at a dinner table asking the right questions at the right time. I built it out of $4,000 and a lot of eggs and a cracked dashboard and a belief that the gap in the market I saw was actually there, that I wasn't imagining it, that sometimes you know something before you can prove it. The article called me a quiet disruptor. I had laughed at that when I read it, but sitting in that driveway, I thought maybe it wasn't wrong. I had been quiet. And I had disrupted things, maybe not in the way they meant, maybe not the market. Maybe just the story my family had told themselves about who I was and what I was worth. I started the car. I turned out of the driveway without looking back at the house. Not because I didn't care. I do care. That's the complicated part. I care more than is probably useful. But because forward is the only direction the car goes when you put it in drive. I had a 7:30 call on Monday morning with our head of product. We were rolling out a new feature, something we'd been building for 8 months, something I was genuinely excited about in the way I only get excited when I know something is actually good. The highway was mostly empty going north. Chicago was 2.5 hours away. I turned the radio on. I let the miles do what miles do. And I reminded myself, the way I have had to remind myself more times than I can count, I am not the story they told about me. I never was. The only story that matters is the one where I kept going anyway. I kept going.